I didn't mean to follow him. At least, that's what I keep telling myself. It started as one of those ordinary evenings when nothing is supposed to happen. The sky was already turning gray, the kind of dull, heavy color that presses down on your chest without you noticing. I had my hood up, hands in my pockets, walking home after another useless day of being ignored, underestimated, and treated like I didn't exist. That's when I saw him. A tall man in a clean coat, walking fast, like he had somewhere important to be. Confident. Untouchable. The kind of guy the world steps out of the way for. And for some reason, he looked familiar. Not his face exactly. Not his clothes. It was the way he walked. Like he owned the street. Something in my stomach tightened. So I slowed down. And when he slowed down, I did too. 10 seconds later, I realized what I was doing. I was following a stranger. Get a grip, I muttered under my breath. You're just tired. But my feet didn't listen. He turned left at the corner. I turned left too. He crossed the street. So did I. At that point, my heart started beating faster, not from fear, but from curiosity. That dangerous kind. The kind that whispers, just a little more. 10 minutes. That's how long I followed him. 10 minutes that changed everything I thought I knew about my life, about my past, and about the man whose name still made people stand up straighter when they said it. Mr. Harland. The most respected man in our town. The man everyone trusted. The man who destroyed my family. But back then, I didn't know that yet. All I knew was that this stranger was heading toward the old district, the side of the city people avoided. Broken lights. Empty buildings. Silence that felt too loud. My pulse was in my ears now. He stopped in front of a rundown warehouse. No sign. No lights. Just a rusted metal door. He knocked. 3 times. Slow. Controlled. The door opened just enough for him to slip inside. And before I could think, before I could stop myself, I stepped forward. And I knocked too. The door creaked open just enough for one eye to look through. Yeah, a rough voice whispered. I froze. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around. Walk away. Forget this ever happened. But something heavier than fear kept me standing there. I'm looking for someone, I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. The eye studied me for a long second. Then the door opened wider. Inside, the air smelled like dust, oil, and secrets. One bare bulb hung from the ceiling, swinging slightly, like it couldn't decide whether to stay still or fall. The man I'd followed was already inside. And when he turned around, my chest went cold. Because now I recognized him. Not from the street. Not from today. But from years ago. From a courtroom photo burned into my memory. From a news headline that ruined my family. From the face that stood beside Mr. Harland the day my father lost everything. His name was Lucas. Mr. Harland's right hand. The man who found the evidence that put my father away. The man who smiled while my mother cried. And now he was standing 10 feet in front of me, in a secret warehouse, in the part of town where no one asked questions. Did you follow me? Lucas asked calmly. Not angry. Not surprised. Just curious. My mouth went dry. No, I lied too fast. He smiled. A small one. A knowing one. That's funny, he said. Because you're not good at hiding it. He gestured to a chair. Sit. Every muscle in my body screamed don't. But I sat today. Lucas leaned against a table, folding his arms. So, he said softly, who are you really? I swallowed. My name is Daniel. Not my full name. Not the name my father gave me. Just enough truth to sound honest. Lucas tilted his head. Daniel, he repeated. And why is Daniel following me? My mind raced. Then I said the one thing I'd been thinking for years but never out loud. Because you ruined my life. Silence. The bulb above us buzzed. Lucas didn't move. Didn't blink. Then, he laughed. Not loud. Not cruel. Just amused. Oh, he said. You're one of those. My hands curled into fists. One of what? Collateral, he replied. The families that get crushed so important people can stay important. My heart slammed against my ribs. You framed my father. Lucas's smile faded. Not into anger. Into something colder. Your father, he said slowly, was weak. And weak men make convenient stories. That was the moment something inside me broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like glass under pressure. Because for the first time, I wasn't just angry. I was awake. Lucas stepped closer. You shouldn't be here, Daniel. I stood up. And you shouldn't be breathing free air. For a second, I thought he might hit me. Instead, he leaned in and whispered, "You don't even know what really happened that night." My pulse spiked. "What do you mean?" He smirked. "Mr. Harlan didn't just take your father's life," he said. "He erased it." The words hit me like a punch. Erased? How? Lucas straightened his coat. "You followed the wrong man today," he said. "But you just walked into the right truth." Then he opened the side door. "Leave, before curiosity gets you buried." I stepped outside into the cold air, my head spinning. Behind me, the warehouse door closed. But the damage was already done. Because now I knew two things. My father's case was bigger than I ever imagined. Mr. Harlan wasn't just respected. He was protected. And I had just become a problem. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lucas's face, calm, amused, untouchable. And behind his words, I heard something worse than a threat. "Mr. Harlan erased your father. Not killed. Not defeated. Erased." By morning, my head felt heavy, like it was filled with smoke instead of thoughts. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at the person I barely recognized anymore. The dark circles under my eyes. The tight jaw. The look of someone who had stopped asking why and started asking how. How did they do it? I whispered. How did they take a good man, twist his story, and make the world believe he deserved what happened? I grabbed my jacket and left before my mother could ask me where I was going. The courthouse was my first stop. That building still made my chest tighten. Cold stone, high ceilings, long halls that echoed every step like a warning. This was where my father stood in chains while strangers judged his entire life in 10 minutes. I walked straight to the public records office. "Case files," I said to the clerk. "Harlan versus Reynolds." She typed for a few seconds, then frowned. "That file is sealed." "Since when?" "Since forever," she replied. "High-profile case. Sensitive information." I leaned closer. "My father's name is on that file." She looked at me again. Really looked. And for a second, her eyes softened. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "There's nothing I can do." I stepped back. So that was it. Sealed. Hidden. Buried. Just like Lucas said. I walked out into the sunlight, but it felt fake. Like the world was pretending everything was normal while something rotten sat underneath it all. That's when I remembered something. Not a document. Not a court record. A person. Maya. She used to work as an intern at Harlan Industries. Not important enough to be seen, but close enough to hear things people didn't mean to say out loud. We hadn't spoken in years. But desperation has a way of killing pride. I found her at a small cafe on the east side of town. Same place she used to go after work. Same corner table. Same nervous habit of stirring her coffee even when there was nothing left to stay. She looked up when I walked in. Her eyes widened. "Daniel." I nodded. "Hey, Maya." She stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. I thought you left town." "So did I said. "Guess some things don't let you go." We sat down. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I said the words that had been boning in my chest all night. "You worked for Mr. Harlan." Her hands froze around the cup. "Yes." "You saw things." She didn't answer. "Maya," I said gently, "my father didn't deserve what happened to him." Her jaw tightened. "No," she whispered. "He didn't." That was all it took. I leaned forward. "Tell me the truth." She looked around the cafe. At the windows. At the door. At the people who didn't care about us. Then she leaned in too. "Your father was never the target," she said. My heart skipped. "Then who was?" "Harlan's business partner," she replied. "The one who suddenly disappeared right after your father was arrested." My mind raced. "What does that have to do with us?" "Everything," she said. "Your father found something. Something that could destroy Mr. Harlan." My throat went dry. What kind of something? Maya hesitated. Then she whispered, "Proof." I felt my pulse in my ears. Proof of what? That Harlan didn't build his empire legally, she said. And that the night your father was arrested wasn't the night the real crime happened. I stared at her. Then what happened that night? She took a slow breath. Someone else disappeared, she said. And your father was used to cover it up. The cafe suddenly felt too small, too loud, too close. Who? I asked. She met my eyes. Mr. Harlan's own partner. And in that moment, everything shifted. Because now I didn't just have a suspicion. I had a direction, and a reason to stop being afraid. Maya's words followed me all the way home. Your father found proof. Not rumors. Not guesses. Proof. That single word felt heavier than anything else she'd said. Proof meant danger. It meant motive. It meant my father didn't just get unlucky, he got silenced. I walked through the neighborhood I'd grown up in, but it didn't feel like mine anymore. Every house looked like it was hiding something. Every shadow felt like it was watching me. When I reached my place, I didn't turn on the lights. I just sat on the edge of my bed in the dark, replaying everything. Harlan's partner. Missing. My father arrested the same week. Too clean. Too convenient. I opened the old box I kept under my bed. The one I hadn't touched since the trial. Inside were my father's things. His watch. His notebook. A few letters he never mailed. I picked up the notebook. It was thin. Cheap paper. My dad had used it for work notes, reminders, little sketches when he was bored. I flipped through the pages. Grocery lists. Phone numbers. Random thoughts. Then, something different. A page with just one name written in the center. E. Kessler. Under it, 3 words. Not what he seems. My breath caught. E. Kessler. Harlan's partner. The one who vanished. My hand started shaking as I turned the page. There were dates, times, and a location I recognized. The warehouse district. The same area where I'd followed Lucas. A cold feeling spread through my chest. This wasn't coincidence. This was a trail. And my father had left it for me. I grabbed my jacket again and went out. Not to be brave. Not to be smart. Just because I couldn't sit still anymore. The warehouse district looked worse at night. Broken lights flickered like they were tired of trying. The streets were empty in a way that felt unnatural, like everyone had agreed to stay away. I found the address from the notebook. A building even more rundown than the one Lucas had gone into. The door was locked, but one of the windows wasn't. I hesitated. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might give me away. Just look, I told myself. Just one look. I climbed in. Inside, it smelled old. Metal, dust, and something else I couldn't name. I used my phone's light. The place was empty, except for one table in the middle. On it, a single folder. My stomach dropped. I walked over slowly, like the air might break if I moved too fast. I opened it. Photos. Documents. And right on top, a picture of my father. Not in court. Not in handcuffs. But standing with E. Kessler, outside this very building. Both of them looking serious. Both of them alive. My chest felt tight. They were together. Which meant my father wasn't some random victim. He was involved. He was close. Too close. I flipped through the rest. Bank transfers. Shell companies. Names I recognized from the news. And one note in my father's handwriting. If anything happens to me, Harlan did it. My vision blurred. Not from fear. From something deeper. From knowing my father had tried to protect us, and failed. That was the moment I stopped being just a son who lost his dad, and became someone who needed the truth. Behind me, I heard a sound. A footstep. I froze. My phone light shook in my hand. Daniel, a voice said softly from the dark. Lucas. I turned slowly. He stood in the doorway, blocking the only exit. Still calm. Still controlled. But now his eyes weren't amused anymore. They were alert. You really don't know when to stop, he said. I swallowed. You followed me. He smiled slightly. Of course I did. He took a step closer. Mr. Harlan doesn't like loose ends. Lucas didn't rush me. That was the scariest part. He just stood there in the doorway, relaxed, like he had all the time in the world. and I had none. You shouldn't be here, he said again, softer this time. My grip tightened on the folder. This belongs to my father. Lucas's eyes flicked down to it, then back up to my face. Your father doesn't own anything anymore. The words hit like ice. I took a slow step backward. You killed him. Lucas tilted his head. No, he replied calmly. We used him. Big difference. My chest burned. You erased him. He didn't deny it. Instead, he stepped aside just enough to let the light from outside spill in. Come on, Daniel, he said. You're not stupid. You don't really think one man built Harlan's empire without getting his hands dirty, do you? I didn't answer. You think your father was special? Lucas continued. He was brave. I'll give him that. But brave men make terrible survivors. He took another step toward me. You've got two choices right now. I swallowed. Leave, he said, and forget what you saw. Or stay, and become another story people stop talking about. The air felt too thick to breathe. I looked at the folder, then at Lucas, then at the open window behind me. My heart slammed, and I ran. Not toward the door, toward the window. Lucas shouted something, but I was already climbing out, scraping my hands, dropping hard onto the concrete outside. Pain shot up my leg, but I didn't stop. I ran until my lungs burned, until the city lights blurred, until I reached the river and had nowhere else to go. I leaned over, hands on my knees, gasping for air. And that's when I realized something worse than fear. They knew my name. They knew where I lived. They knew who I cared about. And now, they knew I had proof. I went straight to my mother's place. She opened the door and froze when she saw my face. Daniel, what happened? We have to leave, I said. Right now. Her eyes widened. Why? Because my father wasn't just arrested, I said. He was set up. And the people who did it are watching us. She didn't argue. She didn't ask for details. She just went to pack. We stayed that night at a cheap motel outside town. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the folder in my hands. Proof. My father's final attempt to tell the truth. But proof only matters if someone is willing to listen. And nobody in this town listened to people like us. That's when another thought hit me. If I couldn't go to the law, then I'd have to go to the world. I opened my laptop, created a new account, a fake name, no photo, no history, and I started writing. Not about revenge, not about anger, about facts, about dates, about money trails, about the partner who vanished, about the man everyone worshipped, and the lies holding him up. For the first time in years, I wasn't powerless. I was dangerous. The post went live at 2:13 a.m. No name, no face, just the truth. I didn't write like a victim. I wrote like a witness. Calm, precise, boring enough to sound real, dangerous enough to make people stop scrolling. I uploaded the first set of documents, blurred the parts that could get my mother hurt, left the rest sharp. Then I waited. At first, nothing. 10 minutes, 20, 30. I stared at the screen, heart pounding, telling myself not to expect anything. Big men like Mr. Harlan didn't fall because of one post on the internet. Then the notifications started. One comment, then 5, then 50. Is this real? Where did you get these? This name. I've seen it in the news. My hands shook as I refreshed the page. A journalist account followed me. Then another. Then a small investigative blog messaged. Can we talk? I didn't reply right away. Instead, I watched. Watched as people started connecting dots I'd been staring at alone for years. By morning, the post had been shared thousands of times. By noon, local news mentioned Mr. Harlan's name, for the first time in a decade, with doubt in their voice. I was sitting in the motel room when my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it ring. It rang again, and again. On the fourth time, I answered. Daniel, Lucas said calmly. You really like attention. My stomach dropped. You're trending, he continued. Did you know that? I said nothing. You've made a mistake, he said. A loud one. You made the first one, I replied. My voice didn't even sound like mine anymore. There was a pause. Then Lucas sighed. You think you're exposing us, he said. But all you're doing is showing us where you are. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, then at my mother, who was folding clothes across the room. She looked up. Who was that? I didn't answer. Because how do you tell the only person you love that the most powerful man in town just noticed you? That night, a black car parked across the street from the motel. It didn't move, didn't turn its lights off. Just sat there, watching. I closed the curtains, opened my laptop, and uploaded the second file. Then the third. Then the one with my father's handwriting. If anything happens to me, Harlan did it. The internet exploded. This time, it wasn't just local. It went national. People started digging. Old cases, missing persons, shell companies. Harlan's name was everywhere. And for the first time in my life, people stopped standing up straighter when they said it. They started whispering it instead. By the third day, the city felt different. Not quieter, not louder, just tense. Like everyone was waiting for something to snap. Harlan's face was on every screen. Not smiling like before. Not confident. Just frozen in an old photo the news kept replaying while asking the same question in different ways. Who is the man behind the empire? I watched from the motel room. My mother sitting beside me with her arms crossed, eyes fixed on the TV like she was afraid it might say our names out loud. They are finally talking, she whispered. Not enough, I replied. The knock came at 8:07 p.m. 3 soft taps. Controlled. Familiar. My stomach dropped. I stood slowly. Stay here, I told my mother. She grabbed my wrist. Daniel. I'll be back. I opened the door. 2 men stood there. Not Lucas. Not Harlan. Just suits. Clean. Polite. Daniel Reynolds, one of them asked. Yes. We'd like to talk. I looked past them. The black car was still there. Engine running. Waiting. About what? I asked. The man smiled slightly. About your father. My heart thudded. Where? He nodded toward the car. I didn't move. If Mr. Harlan wants to talk, I said, he knows where to find me online. The smile vanished. You don't get to set the terms, he replied. I leaned closer. You'd be surprised. Then I closed the door. My hands were shaking. But not from fear anymore. From control. Because now they were reacting to me. Not the other way around. That night, I got a message from the journalist who followed me first. We've verified parts of what you posted. We want a full interview. On record. I stared at the screen. On record meant exposure. Exposure meant danger. But it also meant truth couldn't be buried again. I typed back. Tomorrow. Noon. Public place. They agreed. The cafe where I met Maya. I chose it on purpose. Crowded. Cameras. Witnesses. At 11:58 a.m., I walked in. The journalist was already there. Young. Sharp eyes. Recorder on the table. You're brave, she said. No, I replied. I'm tired. We talked for 2 hours. I didn't cry. Didn't shout. Didn't beg. I just told the story. My father. The partner who vanished. The files. The threats. When I finished, she leaned back slowly. This is bigger than you think, she said. I know. She hesitated. Mr. Harlan's lawyers called us this morning. My jaw tightened. And they offered us an exclusive if we dropped your story. I laughed quietly. They are scared. Yes, she said. They are. That night, the interview aired. And that's when everything changed. Not in whispers. In noise. Protests. Headlines. Investigations. Harlan's company stock dropped. His partners went silent. And Lucas disappeared. No calls. No threats. No shadow in the street. That scared me more than anything. Because men like him don't vanish. They wait. The morning after the interview aired, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Unknown numbers. Blocked IDs. Emails with no names. Some people thanked me. Some warned me. Some begged for more. But one message stood out. You don't know what you've started. No signature. No threat. Just a promise. I deleted it and stared at the motel ceiling, listening to my mother's breathing from the other bed. She was pretending to sleep. I was pretending not to worry. At noon, the news broke that Holland Industries headquarters had been temporarily closed for internal review. The anchor said it with a straight face, but everyone could hear the crack underneath the words. Internal review. That's what powerful men call panic. I packed our things. Not to run, but to move smarter. We switched motels. Then switched again. Each time, I paid cash. Each time, I felt the city getting closer instead of farther away. That afternoon, Maya texted me for the first time in years. They are asking questions at the old office. My name came up. My chest tightened. Are you safe? I wrote back. For now, she replied. But Lucas isn't gone. His quiet Lucas was worse than loud Lucas. By evening, my anonymous account had gained 100,000 followers. People were tagging me in threads, asking for guidance like I was some kind of leader. I wasn't. I was just a son with a folder and a deadline. Then the doorbell rang. Not a knock. A ring. Polite. Civil. I froze. My mother sat up. Daniel? I moved to the door, slow and silent. Looked through the peephole. No suits. No black car. Just an old man in a janitor's jacket, holding a brown envelope. Delivery, he said through the door. For Mr. Daniel Reynolds. My name felt heavy in his mouth. I cracked the door open, chain still on. He slid the envelope through. I shut the door and locked it. Inside, there was no letter. No note. Just a flash drive. And one line written on the back of the envelope in neat, careful handwriting. Your father didn't die in court. He died in that warehouse. My heart stuttered. I sat on the bed and plugged the drive into my laptop. The first file opened to a video. Dark. Shaky. Then light. A camera panning across the inside of a warehouse. Not empty this time. Men in suits. A table. 2 chairs. And in one of them, my father. Alive. Bruised. But alive. I covered my mouth. The video skipped forward. A door opened. A familiar voice filled the room. Let's not make this dramatic. Mr. Holland stepped into the frame. Younger than I remembered. Same eyes. Same calm. My father looked up. You're making a mistake, he said. Holland smiled. You already made it. The video cut before anything else happened. My hands were shaking so badly I had to pause it. Not from fear, from confirmation. Because now I knew, not just that my father was framed, but that he stood face to face with the man who erased him, and that someone, somewhere, had kept the proof. I closed the laptop and looked at my mother. Tears were running down her face. They let him talk, she whispered. They let him think he had a chance. I took a breath. No, I said quietly. He took his chance. That night, I uploaded the video. Not all of it, just enough. The part where Holland walks in. The part where he speaks. The part where my father looks at him and says, "You're making a mistake." Within minutes, it was everywhere. Because when a powerful man is caught on camera doing something he can't explain, he stops being powerful. He starts being hunted. By sunrise, Mr. Holland's name was no longer whispered. It was shouted. News vans lined the street outside his empty headquarters. Reporters spoke fast, tripping over each other's words, trying to be the first to say something that stuck. The video I uploaded, just a few seconds of him stepping into that warehouse, played on every channel like a bad memory the world couldn't blink away. I sat on the edge of the motel bed, laptop balanced on my knees, watching strangers analyze my father's face frame by frame. Look at his eyes, one anchor said. He knows what's coming. I closed the screen, because I already knew. My phone buzzed. Maya again. They are searching old storage rooms. Shredders. Burn boxes. Everything. My fingers flew over the keys. They are scared. No, she replied. They are cleaning. That word hit harder than any threat. Cleaning meant erasing traces. It meant destroying the past faster than the truth could catch up to it. Another message came in. Different number. We need to talk. I stared at it. Then another. It's Lucas. My stomach dropped. I didn't reply. I waited. 2 minutes later, my phone rang. Unknown. I answered. Daniel, Lucas said calmly, like we were old friends. You've been busy. Where are you? I asked. Somewhere quiet, he replied. Where people don't shout your name. You running? He laughed softly. No, I'm thinking. About what? About whether Mr. Holland still deserves my loyalty. The words felt dangerous. You're switching sides. I asked. I'm surviving, he corrected. There's a difference. I leaned back against the wall. You helped erase my father. And now you're erasing my boss, Lucas said. Funny how that works. There was a pause. Then he spoke again. I have something you don't. What? A location, he replied. Where the rest of the footage is. My pulse jumped. You're lying. I don't need to, he said. You already did the hard part. I just have to choose whether I help you finish it or sell it to the highest bidder. I closed my eyes. What do you want? Immunity, Lucas said. Protection. A clean exit. You think I can give you that? I think you can give me exposure, he replied. And right now, exposure is more powerful than the law. He wasn't wrong. Send me the location, I said. Then we'll talk. He chuckled. Careful, Daniel. You're starting to sound like him. The text came through a second later. An address. Not a warehouse. Not an office. A private storage facility on the edge of town. I stared at it. Then at my mother. She was watching me like she already knew what I was thinking. You're not going alone, she said. I'm not going at all, I replied. Not yet. Because now wasn't about courage. It was about timing. I forwarded the address to the journalist. With one line. This is where the rest of the truth is hiding. She replied almost instantly. We're sending a team. I shut the laptop. And for the first time since this started, I didn't feel like I was chasing the truth. I felt like it was finally running toward me. The next morning, I arrived at the storage facility with a journalist and a small team she'd assembled. Cameras, lights, recorders, everything that could turn secrets into proof. The place looked ordinary from the outside. Faded gray metal walls. Locked gates. Nothing to indicate what might be inside. Inside, it was a different story. Rows of storage units lined the walls, some open, some closed. The smell of old paper and rust filled the air. The silence was deafening, like the building itself was holding its breath. We should split up, the journalist whispered. Cover more ground. I nodded, heart hammering. Be careful, she said. I moved forward, trying not to show my fear. Each step echoed on the concrete floor, loud enough to alert anyone listening, or anyone watching. Then I saw it. A unit at the far end, slightly ajar. The lock was broken, the door hanging loose. I pushed it open slowly. Inside were boxes. Hundreds of them. Stacks of documents tied with twine, files labeled with dates and names. Everything my father had feared would be destroyed was here, untouched. And in the middle, a desk. On the desk, a folder with my father's handwriting. Holland, the truth. I reached for it, hands trembling. Then I heard the sound. Footsteps. Behind me. I spun around. Lucas. He was standing there, calm, watching. You found it, he said softly. I swallowed. You lied, I said. You said the footage was only part of the story. Why? Lucas smiled faintly. Because, Daniel, you needed to see everything at once. To understand why your father mattered. To understand what you're up against. I felt my chest tighten. Rage and grief mixed into something almost too heavy to carry. You used him, I said. You erased him. And now you act like a guide. I acted like a survivor, Lucas said. I stayed alive. I protected myself. You're welcome, by the way. Most people die before they even see the truth. I took a deep breath, hands still on the folder. You're going to help me finish this, I said quietly. Or I'll make sure the world knows everything about you too. Lucas laughed softly. Finally. You sound like Holland. I stood taller. Good. Then maybe this time, justice will sound like me. He studied me for a long moment. Then, without a word, he stepped aside. And that's when I realized the real game had just begun. Because now, I had the proof. The cameras were rolling. And the man who had erased my father's life was in my hands, figuratively, for the first time ever. I opened the folder slowly, every paper crackling under my fingers like it was alive. Names, dates, transactions, bank accounts, everything meticulously documented. Then I saw it. A file labeled, Warehouse Night, 2009. My heart stopped. I flipped it open. Inside were photographs, security footage stills. My father, younger, standing in the middle of a dimly lit warehouse. And Holland, towering over him. Then another figure, Lucas. And something I wasn't prepared for, another man, masked, placing bundles of cash into a crate. I dropped the folder, stomach lurching. The camera in the corner of the unit blinked. "You're careful," Lucas said behind me. I spun. "I didn't expect you here," I said. "You never do," he replied calmly. "But now you see why your father was expendable. Why he was the perfect scapegoat." I clenched my fists. "You're evil," I said. "You used him, destroyed him, and you still walk around pretending like nothing happened." Lucas stepped closer. "I survive," he said. "That's all any of us can do." I shook my head. "Not anymore," I whispered. "Because now, the world will see everything." I turned back to the folder, pulling out papers, photos, and maps. The journalist and her team were filming from a distance, capturing every moment. This wasn't just proof anymore. This was the story. Lucas studied me as I worked. "You're brave," he said softly. "Or stupid. I can't tell which yet." I didn't answer. I had no time for doubts. Because the real danger wasn't Lucas anymore. It was Mr. Holland. And I had just put my first move on the board. The files, the videos, the photos, they were all weapons. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I had a chance to use them. I spent the next few hours organizing everything. Every photograph, every document, every scrap of evidence my father had left behind. Lucas stood in the corner, quiet, watching, judging. "You really think the world will care?" he asked finally. I didn't look up. "I know they will," I said. "They'll care because the proof doesn't lie. And because someone has to make them care." He chuckled softly. "Bold. I like that," he said. "But boldness doesn't protect you from Holland." I finally looked at him, eyes sharp. "I don't need protection from him. I need justice." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "Justice," he repeated, like tasting the word for the first time. "That's a dangerous thing to chase." I ignored him and returned to my work. By the time the sun began to rise, the journalist had everything she needed. Files backed up, footage secured, everything ready to go public. Lucas finally spoke again. "You're playing a dangerous game, Daniel." I smiled faintly. "Better dangerous than powerless," I said. He didn't answer. He just nodded and turned toward the exit. "Don't celebrate yet," he said. "This is just the beginning." I watched him leave, the weight of what I had just uncovered pressing down on me. But instead of fear, I felt something else. Determination. Because the next move was mine. And this time, it wouldn't just be about exposing the truth. It would be about making them pay. The city changed after that night. Not on the surface. The streets were the same. The buildings were the same. But underneath, something had shifted. People were watching. Waiting. Harlan's face was everywhere now. Not smiling. Not confident. Just silent. His lawyers gave statements. His company denied everything. His friends stopped answering calls. And me? I stopped feeling small. I spent days working with the journalist team. Planning. Timing. Strategy. We didn't just want noise. We wanted impact. The kind that couldn't be buried. The kind that didn't fade in a week. One night, while I was going through my father's notes again, I found something I had missed before. A short line, scribbled in the margin. "Harlan fears public truth more than prison." I stared at it for a long time. Then I understood. Harlan didn't care about courts. He cared about reputation, about legacy, about being remembered as a great man. And I was about to rewrite his story. We scheduled the full release. Not in parts. Not in leaks. In one controlled explosion. Documents. Videos. Witness accounts. Financial trails. Everything at once. The journalist looked at me across the table. "Once this goes live," she said, "you don't go back to being anonymous." I nodded. "I don't want to." The night before the release, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the dark, listening to my mother breathe, and thought about my father. His hands, his voice, the way he used to say my name like it mattered. Tomorrow, I whispered. They'll hear you. At 9 a.m., the article went live. At 9:01, the world stopped ignoring us. Harlan's phone rang off the hook. His partners disappeared. His board called emergency meetings. And then, the police announced a formal investigation. Not quietly, publicly, cameras flashing, questions shouted. Mr. Harlan didn't walk into the building that day like a king. He walked in like a suspect. I watched it on TV with my hands shaking. Not from fear, from release. Because for the first time since my father died, I wasn't alone with the truth anymore. The whole world was carrying it with me. By mid-morning, the city's tone had shifted entirely. News anchors were no longer questioning the facts, they were questioning Harlan himself. Stockholders demanded answers. Employees whispered in hallways. Friends and allies who had once bowed to his name now looked uneasy, even fearful. I sat in a small cafe, laptop open, fingers hovering over the keys. Every detail of my father's life, every document we had compiled, every photograph from the warehouse night was ready for public release. Lucas appeared at the cafe entrance. This time, no words, just a glance, a nod. He understood. I didn't need to speak. We had played our moves carefully. Every file uploaded, every story told. The journalists were ready. And soon, the full truth would hit the world like a storm. Minutes before the release, I took a deep breath and thought about my father. He had been silenced, framed, erased. But now, the silence would be shattered. I pressed send. Immediately, notifications exploded. Emails, messages, news alerts, social media posts. The full story went viral in minutes. Harlan's empire began to tremble under the weight of exposure. Suddenly, the black SUVs appeared in front of his building. Security was in chaos. Lawyers and staff scrambled to control the fallout. And then, he emerged. Harlan himself. Not the confident man I remembered. Not the untouchable one. No. His shoulders were tight. His face pale. His eyes darting. He knew. The moment he saw the world had turned against him, I felt a release that I couldn't explain. Not revenge in the traditional sense. Not violence. But justice. And the best part? He couldn't hide it. Couldn't control it. Couldn't erase it. Lucas appeared beside me once more, and this time he spoke quietly. Congratulations. You've done what most people could never even dream of. I nodded, barely able to believe it myself. The world was finally paying attention. And for the first time since my father's name was dragged through the date, it felt right. By late afternoon, Harlan's panic had spread to every corner of his empire. Board meetings cancelled. Phones ringing off the hook. Public statements that sounded rehearsed and hollow. And me? I was calm. Lucas had vanished again, but this time, I didn't worry. He was a variable I had accounted for. Instead, I focused on the next step, exposing the full scale of what had happened that night at the warehouse. I gathered everything, the videos, documents, and photographs, into a single package for release. The journalist, her hands shaking with excitement, whispered, "Are you ready?" I nodded. This is it, the final proof. We uploaded it in one shot. Immediately, the chaos began. Harlan's empire began to crumble. Partners distanced themselves. Employees leaked inside stories. Investors pulled out. And the public, they demanded accountability. For the first time in my life, I saw the difference between fear and respect. Harlan wasn't untouchable anymore. And for the first time, I felt like my father's fight wasn't in vain. The proof was out there. The world knew. And Lucas, well, Lucas had done exactly what he was supposed to do, guide me to this moment. As the sun set, I sat back and watched the storm unfold on the news. Harlan's confident facade had cracked. And for the first time in a decade, I felt like a Reynolds man again. Not powerless, not erased, but finally alive. The next morning, the city was buzzing. Harlan's name was everywhere. Headlines, live coverage, social media threads that trended across the country. I walked down the streets quietly, unnoticed, but aware of every glance. People whispered as I passed, some recognizing me from the news, others unaware of who I really was. It didn't matter. The damage had been done. Harlan's office remained empty. Rumors spread that he had fled. The journalists who had once been skeptical were now chasing leads, digging into the connections Lucas and I had uncovered. And then came the message I had been waiting for. From Lucas. Meet me. Warehouse. Midnight. I knew it was the final piece. I went with the journalist team, cameras in tow, ready to capture everything. The warehouse was eerily quiet when we arrived. Shadows stretched long across the cracked concrete floor. The only sound was the faint hum of the city outside. And there he was, Harlan, standing alone. Not arrogant. Not smiling. Just quiet. Lucas stepped forward. And so did I. You brought me here, Harlan said, voice calm, but eyes sharp. I did, I replied. So you can see the truth one last time. He glanced at the cameras, then back at me. You think this changes anything? I shook my head. No, I said. It changes you. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. Not the subtle kind that hides in shadows. Not the kind that can be controlled with money or influence. Genuine fear. The warehouse held the proof. Every transaction, every photograph, every link to the crimes he thought were hidden forever. And now the world was watching. Harlan realized that he could no longer manipulate reality. No threats, no intimidation. The truth had finally cornered him. And Lucas, he simply smiled. Some lessons, he said quietly, need to be taught in person. Harlan swallowed hard. And that was when I finally understood. Revenge isn't about violence. It's about exposure, justice, and finally, balance. The night was cold. Shadows clung to the corners of the warehouse like living things. Harlan sat at the center, facing the evidence he had tried so desperately to erase. Files stacked neatly in front of him, videos ready to be broadcast to the world. I stepped closer, feeling the weight of every choice that had led me here. This is everything, I said softly. Every lie, every cover-up, every moment you thought no one would know. Harlan's hands shook slightly, not a tremor of age, but of panic. You think this changes anything? He asked, voice tight. I shook my head. No, I said calmly, but it changes you. I pressed play on the first video. The screen flickered to life. Footage of him, Lucas, and the masked men from the warehouse night. Every illegal transaction. Every manipulated account. Every attempt to silence my father. Harlan's face turned pale as the footage continued. He glanced at Lucas, but Lucas didn't flinch. Calm. In control. Observing. You used him, I said, voice rising. You destroyed him. And now... I gestured at the cameras, the team filming, the journalists ready to release everything to the world. Now everyone sees it. Harlan swallowed. You'll never understand what it takes to build an empire, he said. I leaned forward. Empires fall, Harlan. Truth doesn't. The room was silent except for the hum of the equipment. Then Lucas stepped forward. You've been safe hiding behind fear and money. But even the tallest towers crumble when the foundation is rotten. Harlan's eyes darted between us. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sorrow. Revenge wasn't about making him suffer. It was about reclaiming what was stolen from my father. Every document, every video, every word now screamed the truth. Harlan realized that power was useless without respect, without the truth on your side. And at that moment, I finally felt it. The weight of my father's absence lifted. Justice served. And a storm of exposure about to engulf the man who had tried to erase everything we loved. I stepped back, letting the cameras roll. The world would see. And nothing, not money, not threats, not fear, could stop it. The countdown had begun. News outlets across the nation were ready. Social media had picked up every leaked file, every snippet of footage, every article exposing the empire. Harlan's lawyers scrambled, their calls ignored. He paced, a predator trapped in the cage of his own making. I watched from a distance, Lucas by my side. You've done well, he said quietly. But are you ready for what happens next? I nodded. I'm ready, I said. The journalist gave the final cue. The first broadcast went live. Harlan's empire, his secrets, his crimes, all laid bare for the world to see. The footage of the warehouse night, the documents, the manipulated accounts, all in full view. I saw it in his eyes before the cameras even captured it. Fear. Genuine fear. The kind that no money, no influence, no power could erase. He tried to speak, but his words faltered under the weight of exposure. The world didn't listen to him anymore. They saw him. The truth. Lucas leaned closer. "See that?" he whispered. "That's the sound of a king falling." I felt it too. Not triumph in a cruel sense, but closure. My father's life had been stolen, but the truth had been restored. Justice wasn't a fantasy anymore. It was here, tangible, undeniable. Harlan's empire began to collapse under the pressure. Stock prices plummeted. Partners abandoned him. Investigations were launched. And as I stepped away from the camera's glow, I felt something that had eluded me for years. The weight of the past lifting, replaced with the clarity of revenge earned and justice served. The world had seen the truth. And for the first time, I could breathe. Lucas nodded one last time, disappearing into the shadows. I turned to the journalist. "It's done," I said. "Yes," she replied. "And the world will remember this story." I smiled faintly, thinking of my father. His name would no longer be erased. The sun rose over the city, and with it, a new beginning. By the following morning, the city had changed. Harlan's name was no longer associated with respect, power, or fear. It was associated with exposure, lies, and downfall. Every headline, every article, every broadcast mentioned his name alongside his crimes. I walked the streets quietly, observing the subtle shifts. Employees no longer whispered in corridors. Partners hesitated before answering calls. Investors pulled back. The empire that once seemed untouchable was crumbling under the weight of truth. I returned to my father's old home, now cleared and quiet. My mother was already there, holding a photo of my father and me from years ago. "He would be proud," she whispered. I nodded, looking at the folder that had started it all. The documents, photographs, videos, proof of every injustice, every cover-up. "I hope so," I said, "because it's finally over." Lucas appeared briefly at the doorway, silent. He gave me a small nod, then disappeared into the shadows. It was done. Not with violence. Not with threats. Not with fear. But with truth. The most satisfying revenge is not in destruction. It's in restoration. I turned off the lights in the house, looking out at the sunrise. My father's name was cleared. His legacy protected. And as I stepped outside, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. The city continued to breathe, unaware of the quiet storm that had passed through. But for me, for my family, for the memory of my father, justice had finally been served. The end. Thanks for watching.